It's time to surrender. Surrender your control. Surrender your desires. Surrender to the universe in order to realize your wildest dreams. So often when we want something, we act, or we pursue it with all our might. But by doing this, all we're really doing is blocking the very thing we desire. So it's time now, today, to surrender. Intentionally surrender. Because when we intentionally surrender to the universe, we make way for miracles beyond our control, beyond our limited perceptions, beyond that which we could ever imagine, and life becomes magical. Let's talk about it. Hi, welcome back to another episode of Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. I'm your host, the creator and founder of the Intentional Home and Living, Courtney Meyers, and today we are talking all about the idea of surrendering, intentionally surrendering. Now, if you are all familiar, which I think most of us are by now, with the idea of manifestation, then I am sure you've heard that you need to surrender. But I think there's something missing when we talk about the concept of surrendering. It's how to surrender. What does surrendering mean? Does it mean just giving up what you want to the universe and waiting for it to magically appear in front of you? Or does it mean actually doing some of the work to get it yourself? And I think it's the latter. You have to show up. You have to put in the work for your intentions or your desires or your manifestations to come to place. But you do have to surrender as well. So how do you surrender? What does surrendering truly mean? A lot of times you are told just to make a vision board and forget about it, to set an intention and walk away, or just to say it out loud and leave it for the universe to pick up and provide. But that's not realistic. That is not how it truly works. In order to truly get what you want, you have to surrender, but you have to show up. That is the key. You surrender what you want. You surrender to the outcome. You surrender to how you are going to get it, but you still show up and do your part in finding it, in getting it, in making it happen. Now, there's a fine line because you don't want to get in the way of the universe doing its job. You don't want to get in the way of blocking the things you want coming to you. And that all hinges on the concept of control. When you try to control your intentions, when you try to control the outcome, when you try to control what you want, you get in your way. That is where you need to surrender. You need to surrender your control of what you want to the universe so that it can provide it to you in ways that you may never realize that it can. That is one thing my mentor has instilled in me. She talks about it all the time, that your limited knowledge of any scenario, of any situation is just that. It is limited. You don't know everything that you need to know to make a decision or to know how something is going to come to be. You don't know. So you have to work with your knowledge. You have to show up every day and put one foot in front of the other, doing what you can to reach your dreams, but then you also have to let go of how you get them. The perfect example. Quite a while ago, I was working on a new TV show launch called The Doctors. This show is being brought to air by Dr. Phil and his son and their production team. So in the process, we would create a sales tape for the sales team to take out to networks to sell it into syndication. And while I was doing this, I had to scour hours and hours of footage of Dr. Phil interviews to use as part of my sales presentation. During this time, I came across a video of Dr. Phil talking to a young woman, and she was desperate to find love. That's all she wanted. She was in search of love, but what was she doing to get it? Nothing. He had to have a come to Jesus moment with her. He sat her down on the couch and told her, the perfect man is not going to come knock on your door and give you a marriage proposal. You have to put yourself out there. She wasn't even dating. If you don't date, you can't meet the perfect man. And that's the same thing with the concept of surrendering. You can't just say, I want to get married, and then sit back on your couch and say, well, I'm surrendering it to the universe. It's going to come to me. I'm going to get married on this date or in the future. That's not going to happen. It's not realistic. You need to put yourself out there. Now you need to put yourself out there, maybe remove all the limitations on what you're doing to find the perfect person. I know many, many, many people who have lists of what they want or what their perfect person looks like when they go out and date, but they're so strict to those lists, no one is ever going to match that person. It would be so much more beneficial to them if they just surrendered, let go of the list, just put themselves out there. I did the same exact thing. I wanted more than anything in my life to get married and start my family. It took me till I was 37 to meet my husband and start my family. And when it happened quick because I surrendered to how it should happen. I didn't take the practical route. I didn't follow the path that most people do. I knew that this is what I wanted. And I tried time and time again to find the right person for me, to find the right match. And every time I got into a relationship, I latched on and tried to control the outcome with all of my might. I tried to make everything work so that we would walk down that aisle. I had my eye on the marriage, not what was really right for me. I didn't surrender to what I really wanted, which was love, companionship, marriage with the right person for me. So as I got older, I tried it different ways. I kept trying. And lo and behold, those relationships never worked because you can't control the outcome. You cannot say you want something and control how it happens. That does not work. When a relationship finally worked for me, when I found my person, when I found the right person, I set the intention that I was going to find my person. I removed all the lists and boundaries and who the person had to be. I just put myself out there. I did my part by showing up. I put myself on dating sites. I accepted dates. I double booked. I went out there. I put myself out there, but I removed all of the boundaries of who I was looking for, why I was looking for them, and how we were going to get to the end game. And by doing that, I allowed the universe in to introduce me to the perfect person for me. And when it happened quick. And that is the whole concept behind surrendering. You still have to do, but you have to allow. So how do we do that? How do we walk that fine line between doing and allowing? Now, this is not something that comes super easy or natural to me. Like I said, I am a control freak, just like I try to control all those relationships. I have tried to control almost everything in my life. I am so bad that I will pick up a novel, I will start the first chapter, and I will skip all the way to the last page to see how it ends because I can't handle the in-between. But we need to get comfortable with that in-between. We need to get comfortable with the uncertainty of how things are going to unfold or how things are going to end. That's when you're trying to control and manipulate scenarios. That's when they're never going to work out. So let's talk about the whole concept of doing and showing up, yet allowing the universe to do its job and put the opportunities and put the things in place for you so that you can realize your biggest desires. Over the weekend, I was forced to surrender. I didn't want to surrender. It was a forced surrender from the universe. I was working on my book proposal to go to the editor that is working on my book, and I was about halfway done, something I had promised to get out by Friday, and this was Saturday, so I was already a little bit late. And I just couldn't get the concept out of my mind that I needed to go run some errands. I had to do it. I had to go run errands right now. I'll finish the book proposal later. Even though I kept telling myself over and over again over the last couple days, oh, I'll do it later. I'll do it when the kids go to sleep. And I never did. So I go out to the car. I leave the book proposal with the idea that I'm going to come back to it later. I turn the car on and the battery lights blinking red and it's not shutting off. And I'm talking to my husband, and at the time, right now, we only have one car because we moved cross country and we haven't got a second car yet. So we only have the one car. And I called my husband. He said, do not drive the car. You come home, something's wrong with it. Let me look at it. So I turned around, came home. He looked at the car. The light wouldn't go off. We tested the battery. Everything was working properly. So he had to take it to the car dealership. Lo and behold, I'm freaking out because I need to go run errands and the kids are asleep and taking naps, and I don't have a lot of time usually to get things done. But I have to. I don't have the option. He's like, the car can strand you somewhere and we have no way to get you home. So I have to leave the car and come inside, and he takes it to the mechanic on Saturday to try and figure out what's going on with it. Well, now what do I have to do? All I can do is stare at my book proposal. It's right in front of me. I have to work on it. I get a call from my husband, and he tells me the car needs a new alternator. We cannot drive it. They cannot fix it till next week. So he comes home, and we cannot leave over the weekend because we cannot get stranded with our car. We can't get it fixed until Monday. This is on Saturday afternoon. And so all I have in front of me is time to finish this book proposal. So what do? I have to surrender. As frustrated I am, I throw my hands up in the air and I go back to work. I finish my book proposal. I get it done and send it off to the people that needs to go to. Now they're usually in a different time zone and they happen to be traveling this weekend. So they were in earlier time zone. So even though that I got the book proposal to them later in the day from Tennessee, they were in California. They got it earlier. It got to where it needed to go. It got in front of the eyes it needed to get into. And honestly, that wouldn't have happened. That would not have happened had I gone out to run my errands, because I would not have finished that book proposal on Saturday. I probably would have finished it maybe Sunday night, and then it wouldn't have gotten in front of the eyes it needed to at the beginning of the week. Who knows when it would have got there? It got there when it needed to, and now it's with the right eyes. It's with the right people, and the chances of my manifestation of this first book getting published as soon as possible are more real today than they were on Saturday because I had to surrender. So this is an idea of surrendering in everything. I showed up, I did the work. The universe stepped in and said, no, you're not going to leave this alone. You're going to continue to do the work. And it worked in my favor. So sometimes surrender can be forced like this. Other times surrender will come in the form where you have to make the choice to surrender. The universe isn't going to step in and force you to surrender. You are going to have to choose to surrender. And honestly, when you have to choose to surrender, I think it is so much harder than when you're being forced to surrender. Because when you're being forced to surrender, you really don't have any other options. It just is. You have to do it. Now, choosing to surrender looks a little bit different. It can honestly look different to everyone in how you choose to surrender. I had to choose to surrender when we were moving to Tennessee. We had sold our house in California and we were coming down to the wire. We were coming down to the day that we had chosen as our moving date, but we didn't have a house secured yet. And I couldn't find a rental that I liked enough or that would work for the family. So we were kind of in a dire scenario. So every night I would journal. I would journal and write what I hoped for, what I wanted, and I would give it over to the universe. I would ask the universe to step in and help us find a home, a place to call home when we landed in Tennessee. And I did this night after night after night. But I didn't stop showing up. Every day, I was looking at house listings. I was looking at rental listings. I was looking at homes for sale. I was doing my part, and I continued to search. But every night before I went to bed, I gave it over to the universe. Please help us find a home. So one day, a few weeks before we were supposed to move, I found this house that came across Redfin, and I sent it to our realtor and said, this looks like a great house. And we went back and forth, and this is in the height of everyone way overbidding on homes. And she said, okay, well, let's go in aggressive. And mind you, we haven't even seen this house. Let's go in 100,000 over asking and blah, 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 blah. And my husband and I are kind of like, wait, I don't know about that. We haven't even seen this house. So we kind of took a step back and we waited, and I continued to journal. But that house kept coming up. It kept coming up in front of me. All weekend, it just kept coming up in my feed, and something kept telling us to look at it again and look at it again and look at it again. The weekend passed. During that week, we actually heard about an off-market house that we should put an offer on. So we did. We didn't get that house. But the house that we had been looking at over the weekend was still available. We waited another day and another day, and it was still available, and it kept coming up on our feed. At this time, I had continued to surrender, kept saying, bring us a home, bring us a home, bring us a home. Well, the universe was bringing us a home. Finally, we said to the realtor, okay, let's do this. We're not going to go over asking. We're not going to do this. We put in an offer on the house, and within hours, it was accepted. this is in the height of the hardest time to get a home. I think we maybe offered $10,000, $15,000 over ask. Nothing like what people were doing at the time. We got the home. Everything was perfect. And get this, we were going to be able to take possession of the house 7 days after we moved to Tennessee. We only needed to find an Airbnb for 7 days until we could move into our house. The timing was impeccable. It was divine. And that is what happens when you surrender. I chose to surrender to the universe to bring me our home. And we did. I showed up. I still did my part. Every day I looked and I searched, but I didn't know how we were going to get this house. It was so hard to get a house in this market. We had a fixed budget. It's not like we had all the money in the world just to go buy any house and offer millions over asking. We had to work with certain parameters, and I was at a loss. I didn't know what we were going to do. I didn't know if we were going to have to be in an Airbnb for 6 months till we tried to find a house or a rental. Nothing seemed to work when I tried to control the scenario. I just looked and put it out into the universe, and the universe provided. So that is what happens when you truly do surrender. And it's not easy, especially for a control freak like me, the person who reads the last page of a book before they start it because I want to know how it ends. I want to know how everything is. And that is one of the biggest things you can do wrong when it comes to manifestation, setting intentions, or realizing your desires, is trying to control the outcome, trying to control a relationship, trying to control people, trying to control a situation. Control is your enemy. Surrender is your friend. But show up. Show up when you surrender. Still put one foot in front of the other. Still do the work. Still put yourself on the dating site. Take every date you can. Go meet as many people as possible. You don't know when you are going to find the one. You don't know when you are going to find the house. You have to do the work, but you have to let the universe bring it to you and provide it, and trust that you are going to be put in the situation that is right for you at the right time. Surrendering is all about letting things happen at the right time. So that is my intention for you this week, is to truly pick something that you can surrender. Just pick something so you can see how it works. And I suggest writing it down. You need to do what works for you. Sometimes it's just speaking it out loud, or even speaking it in your head, or praying about it. Whatever resonates with you. I think when it comes to spiritual work, you have to do what feels right to you. Not everyone likes to write. Not everyone likes to say things out loud. So do what works for you. Write something, in the steam on the shower door, if that's what feels right to you. But write down, say it, whatever your intention or your desire is, and then do a little ritual to give it up, to signify your surrender. Whether you write it down and you burn it in your fireplace or over your stove, whether you write down your intention or your desire in the steam on the window of your shower door, and then you wipe it off. Whether you say it out loud and blow it into the air. I don't care what you do, how you do it, but say it and then give it over to the universe physically. But then take one action, 1 or 2 actions the next morning, the next day, later that day, and that leads you towards what your desire is. So if your desire is, I want to have $1 million in the bank, and I know that could seem like a huge manifestation, you have to start somewhere. You're not going to have $1 million in the bank if you don't have a penny in the bank. So start a savings account. Start a coin jar. Start writing yourself a check, even if it's a fake check, and put it in a drawer. Do something physical to show that you are putting money into an account, into a savings, into something that will build. Every time you take that step towards doing what your desire is, the universe will meet you. The universe is going to meet you with what you're doing. Just like when I was dating to find my husband, every time I set another date, the universe would provide me with the direction of where I was going, whether this was right or wrong. It would just make it that much more clear. I was weeding out through the people until I found my person. The same thing with the house. Every time I tried to put an offer in on a different house before we got our house, but that got denied. The right house was waiting for us. It was a house that should have sold in that first day, but it was a perfect storm of events that left that house available for us. It was during a huge snowstorm over a spring break week where they had only one open house and no one came through. The previous owners were already in escrow on their new home, and they needed to sell this house and close by a certain day so that they can close on their new home. It had to happen. They were in a time of need. We were the perfect buyers. We came in at the time, and it all worked out because the universe put it in front of us. I was showing up. I was trying. So put out what you want. I was journaling at that moment. I was journaling all about it, what I wanted, what I was looking for. And I put it out into the universe. I showed up, and the universe provided. So that's what I want you to do. Put something out into the universe. Anything. Pick one of your dreams, one of your desires, one of your manifestations. Write it down. Write it on your shower wall. Speak it out loud. Put it out there. Say, I surrender. Jesus, take the wheel. Throw your hands up in the air. Whatever it takes to signify you surrendering. Burn the paper. Bury it in the backyard. Whatever you need to do to make yourself believe you are surrendering, and then take action. Next morning, the next day, the next afternoon, after you do it, within the first 12 hours after you set this intention or this manifestation, take an intentional action towards what that goal is and keep doing it. The universe will meet you, and that is how you will get what you want. That is how manifestations happen. That is how manifestations build upon one another. And that is how you start to live a magical life. That is how your life becomes this miraculous event that people stop and say, how did this happen? How did you get so lucky? How did you achieve this? Lucky girl syndrome is a huge thing right now. Everyone is talking about lucky girl syndrome. It's the same thing. You just believe it. You put it out there and you allow the universe to provide. You are lucky. You have a beautiful life. You have a magical life. And you get this by surrendering, by allowing the universe to give you everything you desire and everything you want. And that's it. It's that simple. That is all it takes to truly get what you want. Now, this may take time. It does not always happen overnight, but be consistent. Be consistent with your desires, with your surrender, and your actions. You can't stop actions. You can't sit on the couch and just wait for Mr. Right to knock on your door. It's never going to happen. You have to put yourself out there to make it happen. You have to put yourself out there and open yourself to the universe at the same time to allow what's meant to be to come in, because you don't know how it's going to come in. You cannot control the scenario of how it's going to come in. All you can do is make yourself available for it to come in. And when you allow the universe to show up for you, the miracles come fast and they come furious. So I am so excited to see what magic you start to bring into your life. Let us know in the show comments and join us again next week. I am so happy to have you here listening to Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. Stay tuned for more information on our first book release, The Intentional Home. And as always, you can find The Intentional Home and Living at CourtneyMyers.com, on YouTube, on social, and join us for all our daily intentional content. So thank you once again for joining us, and I can't wait to talk to you next week. Bye.